You know how it is. The holidays roll around and you've got all these perfect, cozy plans lined up. It's supposed to be this magical time for family and making memories. But what happens when reality just comes and completely steamrolls those plans? Well, we're going to dive into one mother's story that explores exactly that. So picture this. It's Christmas Eve. For this mom and her 10-year-old daughter, the morning was supposed to be really simple and sweet. They had a special event they'd booked a whole month in advance, and then the plan was to come home and bake a Christmas cake together. Sounds perfect, right? And then this number pops up on the thermometer, 38.1 degrees Celsius. That's about 106 Fahrenheit. And just like that, in an instant, that simple, joyful plan was completely shattered. This wasn't just a little fever. It was the start of a weeks-long ordeal for the entire family. And the dominoes started falling immediately. The Christmas event? Canceled. The cake baking? Not happening. And all that fresh fruit they bought for it was now just sitting there, on a countdown to going bad. To try and stop the sickness from spreading, her older daughter was quarantined to a spare room with a strict rule. You can't leave. The holiday was officially on pause. Now, you might be thinking, okay, a fever that breaks the next day, maybe that's the end of it. But nope, it wasn't. The author says this was just the opening shot in what she calls a 3-week trip into health issue hell. And you can see on this timeline just how relentlessly it spread. December 24th, the older daughter gets sick. 4 days later, on the 28th, the mom herself has a sore throat. New Year's Eve, the 5-year-old starts complaining about a terrible headache. Then, just when they thought they were in the clear, the virus comes roaring back. On January 8th, the 5-year-old spikes a really high fever, 39.6 Celsius, which is nearly 103.5 Fahrenheit. The siege was nowhere near over. And this is where things really started to fall apart. Her youngest was diagnosed with influenza A, and while the mom was taking care of her, her own health was just collapsing. I mean, can you imagine? You're dealing with chills, nonstop sneezing, and you are just bone tired, all while trying to give 24/7 care to a very sick, very unhappy little kid. She calls it an impossible game. And that game just never let up. The complaints from her 5-year-old just kept coming, this constant barrage. It started with, "My tummy hurts." And then, "My head hurts." Any parent out there knows this feeling, right? That total helplessness as your kid is suffering and the exhaustion that just keeps building as you try to make it better. And then it just got worse. Her daughter's cries of "I hurts" became the soundtrack to their life. The author says her daughter was waking her up more than 6 times a night, pushing her deeper and deeper into this state of complete physical and mental exhaustion. And then, one night, she just snapped. Her daughter is crying in pain, and she yells back, "It doesn't hurt. Go to sleep." It was this awful moment of just raw desperation. She said it was like hitting rock bottom, saying something she knew in her heart was completely untrue and so, so unkind. So a few days go by, and the fever finally breaks. The crisis seems to be over, but that emotional moment still lingered. And that's when her 5-year-old daughter, still pretty upset, delivered a lecture that was honestly as surprising as it was profound. She started with this. Just this incredibly sharp observation. When you say it doesn't hurt, you're not thinking about me. I mean, wow. Think about the clarity there. She's spelling out this core human need we all have, to be seen and to have our feelings validated. But she didn't stop there. She actually connected her mom's words to this bigger idea. Not thinking about people is bullying. And then she explained the direct result. When you get angry, I just cry more. She laid out the cause and effect of her mom's burnout with perfect, heartbreaking logic. And then she gave her a solution, and it was so simple and powerful. If you just worried about me, it would stop right away. All she needed was empathy. She wasn't asking for a magic pill to stop the pain. She was asking for her mom's compassion. So hearing this from her daughter it forced her to stop and really look at herself. It wasn't enough to just feel guilty about it. She needed to understand why. Why did she act that way? What was it that pushed her so far that she denied her own child's pain? And her soul-searching led her to these 2 really interesting Japanese concepts to explain what happened. The first one is ama. That's the tendency we have to take the people we love for granted, letting ourselves say hurtful things to them we would never, ever say to a stranger. And the second is yoyu no nasa, which basically means having a complete lack of personal capacity. No more room, no buffer, brought on by that relentless stress and lack of sleep. So the huge realization she comes to is this. It wasn't just a personal failing. The situation itself was the problem. Now, her husband was helping with things like meals and running errands, but that core 24-hour nursing duty, that all fell on her. And she concludes that this kind of solo care for a really sick kid is simply an impossible game. And this whole experience brought her to a critical understanding. Humans can't make normal judgments when they can't sleep. It's just a biological fact. It's why things like a night cafe in Japan, a place for struggling parents to go get support, are so incredibly important. Sometimes just a small break, a little bit of space, is enough to get a parent back to a place where they can be kind and empathetic again. And that brings us right back to the title of her blog post and the question she leaves us with. Is it really wrong for a mom to have a small capacity? Or is the real problem the expectation that any one person's capacity should be endless, especially when they're running on fumes? It's a question that really makes you think, not just about personal strength, but about the support systems we have, or maybe don't have, for parents when they need them the most.